Geometry, Unit 5, Day 1 notes. Let's warm up with some Pythagorean Theorem action like we had in Unit 4. Okay, it says for each triangle below, we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. Now, if you remember, we used a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c was the hypotenuse. And we're going to find the missing links in these 4 triangles for our warm-up. Okay, we're not going to use decimals. We are going to not allow radicals in the denominator. We're going to rationalize those just like we did in Unit 4. Okay, and we're going to simplify any radical that we have. So let's start right off. Right, our C is going to be the hypotenuse of this triangle. Our A and B, you can have either side, either leg will be A and B. All right, so in this case, we have A squared plus the B is going to be 3 squared equals, now because there's a bit to this next term here. There's a radical and there is a coefficient in front of the radical. I'm going to put those in parentheses because we're going to square both of those things. All right, so now let's do the squaring as we start our solving for A. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. 3 squared and root 2 squared. Okay, 3 root 2 squared. We got to square the 3 and square the root 2. Okay, I want you to think about it like this. I'm going to put a little workspace here. Right, there's a little workspace here. I'm going to take 3 root 2 and I'm going to square it by multiplying it by itself, because that's what squaring means. So what can I multiply here? I can multiply the 3 times the 3, which is 9. And then these are all multiplied. So 9 times root 2 times root 2. Well, root 2 times root 2 is root 4, which is just 2, as you know. So it's 9 times 2, which is 18. Right? So that's what 3 root 2 squared is. It's 18. Great. So let's look at solving here now. Does this say 9 plus 18? No, it does not. So we're not going to do that. We're going to subtract 9 from both sides. So you have a squared, because these two 9s, positive and negative, cancel beautifully, equals 18 minus 9, which is 9. Great. So we have a squared. We don't want it. We want a. If we square root one side, we square root the other side. Square root of 9 is 3. All right. So this question mark is 3 units long. Okay. So look at that. Oh, look, there's a 3 as well. And then opposite the 90, the hypotenuse was 3 root 2. Well, let's remember that as we go along here. Oh, by the way, what's this angle going to be? Remember, the 3 angles have to add up to 180 in any interior of a triangle. So 90 and 45 add up to 135. So I need 45 more. So 45 plus 45 plus 90 gives me 180. That's kind of cool. Let's look at the triangle below. Well, this is another 45, 45, 90, right triangle. Sweet. So let's deal with this one. The C will be the question mark, because that's the hypotenuse. And now the A and the B have the 2 legs. So we have 4 squared plus 4 squared equals C squared. Okay, let's square our 4s. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 4 is 16. All right, now does this say 16 plus 16? Yes, it does. So we're going to add them together and get 32. And then we're going to take the square root, both sides. So we get C is the square root of 32. Okay, remember in the directions, we're not going to use decimals. We're going to do simplified radicals. Great. So remember how to do this? We just did it in the previous unit. Remember the perfect squares. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. Okay, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared. All right, I want the largest one that's a factor of 32. Well, if I find the biggest one, it's going to be 16. Well, 16 times 2 is 32. So root 16 times root 2 is equal to root 32. Let's simplify root 16, which is 4. And then root 2 can't be simplified anymore, so we just bring it down. And so look at what we get right here. So this question mark is going to be 4 root 2. Well, that's kind of interesting. Okay, so we have 4 and 4 for the two legs. The legs, remember, are the two sides that create that right angle. Okay, so this side and this side make the 90-degree angle. And then the hypotenuse was 4 root 2. All right, so let's go over to these other two triangles on the right side. Okay. So we have right here a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. Cool. Opposite the 30 is a 2. Opposite the 60, we got a question mark. We have no idea what it is. And then opposite the 90 is a 4. All right. So if we want to use the Pythagorean theorem to find the question mark, we can call it A or B. Let's call it B. Switch it up a little bit. Have the 2 be A, have the 4 be the C. All right. So A squared, but A is 2. So 2 squared plus B squared equals 4 squared. Okay, let's square these things. 2 squared is 4. B squared is B squared. B there, or B squared. 4 squared is 16. Does this say 4 plus 16? No, it doesn't. So don't do it. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that 4, not add it. I'm going to cancel it. 4 minus 4 cancels beautifully, leaving me with B squared. And 16 minus 4 is 12. We don't want B squared. We want B. So we have to square root both sides. And we got the square root of 12. Well, is that simplified radical form? No, because 12 is 4 times 3. 4 is a perfect square. So square root of 4 times square root of 3 is the square root of 12. Well, root 4 is 2. Root 3 is root 3. So that is what my B side question mark is going to be over here. Kind of interesting. All right, let me divide these guys up just a bit here. Okay, we have one more triangle in the warm-up to solve for a variable. Okay, this time the variable is going to be the hypotenuse. We'll call it C. Pythagorean theorem. Let's call this A and this B. Remember, you can switch the A and the B. Doesn't matter. I just chose those. All right, so A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Awesome. Let's square these things. 3 squared is 9. 3 root 3. Well, like what we did back here with the 3 root 2, I'm going to make a little work area here. My work area, I'm going to set aside, let's set it aside right over here. 3 root 3 times itself. Okay, so 3 times 3 is 9. Root 3 times root 3 is 3. Okay, and 9 times 3 is 27. So that's what's going to go right here. Okay, so this was my little work area. This is just kind of off to itself. Okay, equals C squared. Does this say 9 plus 27? Yes, it does. So let's do that. 36 equals C squared. Take the square root, so we get C. And C is the square root of 36, which is 6. Okay, well, that's kind of cool. So this C is 6. So we've got a 3 root 3, and a 6. And above, we had a 2 root 3, and a 4. Interesting. So let's answer these questions. Based on your answers, how many types of triangles do you notice? Well, I noticed that we had 45, 45, 90 right triangles on the left. These guys are 45, 45s. And then over here, we had 30, 60, 90s. Let's go with a different color. 30, 60, 90. And opposite of those angles were a leg that was the same size. And then we had the hypotenuse. Okay, so we had leg, they were both 4. And then 4 times root 2 was the hypotenuse. 3, 3, and then 3 times root 2 was hypotenuse. So it looks to me like the hypotenuse looks like it's one of the legs times root 2. That's pretty cool. Okay, so hypotenuse equals either one of those 45, 45, 90 legs times root 2. Well, what about on the 30, 60s over here? What was the pattern here? Well, opposite of the 30 was the smallest side. Opposite of the 60 is the middle side, obviously, because it's the middle angle. And then opposite the 90, the hypotenuse is going to be the largest side. Cool. So opposite of the 30-degree angle, we're going to call it the shorter leg. Opposite of the 60-degree angle, that's the medium side, which is the longer leg. So opposite of those angles. And then opposite of the 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse. Okay, so what patterns do you see here? Well, I got a 3 for that shortest leg opposite the 30. And do I see any other 3s? I see a 3 here. Times root 3. Well, let's look up here. Here's a opposite the 30 is a 2. Do I see any other 2s? Yeah, there's a 2 here. Times root 3 again. So this times root 3, this times root 3. So it looks like the short leg, I'll just call it SL for short leg. If I have the short leg and I multiply it by root 3, I get the long leg. What about the hypotenuse? This hypotenuse was 6. First hypotenuse was 4. Well, 6 is double that 3, and 4 is double this 2. So I can see a pattern where every hypotenuse is the short leg times 2 equals hypotenuse. Okay? Worked out beautifully. Okay. This is what you figured out right here. This is what we just discovered. So let's look at it. So what did we just discover? We discovered that in any 45, 45, 90 right triangle, that the 2 legs are congruent. So if this one is 8, this is 8. If this is 82, this is 82. Doesn't matter. But then if I want to know the hypotenuse, I just take that leg and I multiply it by root 2. So if this is 6, this is 6 root 2. If this is 61, this is 61 root 2. Okay. Now, if we go backwards, if I have this side and I want to get this side, if I have a hypotenuse and I want to get a leg, instead of multiplying by 2, I'm going to get smaller, so I'm going to divide by root 2. Okay? So it's really easy to use 45, 45, 90s because leg times root 2 equals hypotenuse. And hypotenuse divided by root 2 is equal to one of the legs. All right, that's all you need to know for the 45, 45, 90. Now for the 30, 60, 90, we said that if this is the short leg, and then this is opposite the 30, we know that this is the hypotenuse, opposite the 90, and then opposite the 60 is the medium leg, the medium side, which is the longer leg, okay, LL for long leg. Right, so what do we know about this? If I know the short leg, big hint, we need to make sure that we find the short leg if they don't give you the short leg. Okay, find the short leg first. Okay, first thing you're going to do, if they don't give you the short leg, find the short leg. All right, so how do we find the hypotenuse if we have the short leg? Well, it's just times 2. If the short leg is x, the hypotenuse is 2 times x. So short leg times 2 gives you the hypotenuse. And then short leg times root 3 is going to give you your longer leg, the side opposite the 60, right? Just remember, 2 is bigger than root 3, and the hypotenuse is bigger than the long leg. Okay, now let's do a couple of questions from 45, 45. All right, here we have one of the legs opposite the 45, and we want the hypotenuse. Okay, so this is a leg. So the leg times root 2 in a 45, 45 is equal to the hypotenuse. Well, 10 times root 2 doesn't get any easier than that. 10 root 2. Done. Slide down. Here we have the hypotenuse. We want to get the leg. Well, if we have the hypotenuse and we want the leg, we have to take the hypotenuse and divide it by root 2. How do I know? Because hypotenuse is larger than the leg, so we're getting smaller, which means we divide. So root 10, we're going to have to divide by root 2. Here's a little something for you. This, I hope, will make it easier. Because they both have radicals or roots on top of them, we can actually consider this like root 10 over 2. Okay, they both have radicals on top of them. So we could just make that into one big radical. All right, so 10 over 2, we can simplify that to 5. Square root of 5. And think of it, square root of 5 times square root of 2 is square root of 10. Right, there's a couple of 45s. Let's go straight down it and do this question as well. You know why? Because it says it's a square. A square has 90-degree angles. Okay, even these are 90, but I don't care about those two because there's a diagonal. And a square has congruent sides. So I want us just to look at this half of the square. This half of the square happens to be, obviously it's a triangle, but think about it. That's 90. Sides are equal, congruent, which means the angles here have got to be congruent. So this is a 45, 45, 90 right triangle. Okay, So don't worry about this part down here. Don't even think about that. All I care about is the fact that I have the hypotenuse of this red triangle, and I want to find the leg. So it's the hypotenuse I've got, the leg I want. So I know that hypotenuse, to get to the leg, it's got to get smaller. So I'm going to divide it by square root of 2. Okay. Can't have a square root in the denominator, so we're going to have to multiply that denominator by root 2, which means we've got to multiply the numerator by root 2 as well. So 4 times root 2, can't get any easier than that, 4 root 2. Root 2 times root 2 is root 4, which is 2. And then the last thing you have to check is the numbers that don't have radicals. Can we reduce the fraction? Sure, 4 over 2 is 2. So it's 2, and then bring that root 2 down. And that we have, that's what our x equals here. And that's an x. Okay, so there's some practice with 45/45s. Now let's look at some 30/60s. Okay. So opposite the 30 is the short leg. Opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse. So short leg and hypotenuse. What do I know about short leg and hypotenuse? I know that the short leg times 2 is going to give me the hypotenuse. So short leg times 2, I'll use parentheses this time, equals the hypotenuse. Okay, so I've got the short leg. Sweet. Root 7 times 2 is equal to the hypotenuse. Well, root 7 times 2 is just 2 root 7. Okay, they don't both have a radical on them, so I can't call it 14 or root 14. So it's 2 root 7. And you're done. That's what x is. Slide her on down now. Okay, this time, opposite the 30, we've got it. That's the short leg. Opposite the 90, we've got, that's the hypotenuse. So again, we're going short leg and hypotenuse, but this time we already have the hypotenuse. So instead of multiplying by 2, we have to do the opposite. We're going to get smaller. So we're going to take the root of 8 and we're going to divide it by 2. Okay? Only problem is root 8, we can simplify it. Okay? So I'm going to make a little work area over here. Root 8. Well, 8 is 4 times 2. So root 8 is root 4 times root 2. Square root of 4 is 2. Bring their root 2 there. Okay, so I'm going to replace root 8 with 2 root 2. Put it over 2. Check to see if this can reduce. It can, so that's 1 root 2, which is just the square root of 2. All right. Slide her on down. Okay, now this will be the most difficult one that we have. Why? Because opposite the 30 is the short leg, and they didn't give it to us. All right, remember my words of wisdom up here. First thing you got to do, make sure you got the short leg. If you don't have it, find it. Okay, so short leg times 2 is the hypotenuse. So if they give me the hypotenuse, I'm going to divide by 2 for the short leg. Short leg times root 3 is the long leg. So if they gave me the long leg, I'll divide by root 3 to get the short leg. All right, let's try it. What did they give us? They gave us this. There's a 3. Cool. Well, how do I go from hypotenuse to short leg? A hypotenuse divided by 2 gives me short leg. So this is going to be 3 divided by 2. Right? 3 is the hypotenuse, divided by 2 is 3 over 2. It's okay if you wrote 1.5, by the way. So the last thing we're going to do here is we got to find x. So that's the longer leg. And what was the rule up here? The rule was short leg times the square root of 3 gives me the longer leg. Well, I did the hard work. Short leg times root 3 equals the longer leg. Short leg is 3/2 times root 3. Okay, so 3 times root 3 is 3 root 3. Okay? There's like a invisible 1 there. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay? So my answer is 3 root 3 over 2. That's as good. That is as difficult as you're going to get in this section if they don't give you the short leg. Okay, because you have to find the short leg first. All right, and that's why I think that's the most difficult part. All right, page 2 is done. Now all we have is a couple of cool downs. All right, these are the ones that if we were in class, I would say, you know, do these 2, and then we can get you onto your homework. Right. If you want to do this on your own, pause me and then unpause me when you're done. And let's see if you got the right answer. Okay, go ahead. Okay, if you didn't pause, shame on you. If you did pause, you can unpause. We're good. All right, so what do we have? We have a 45, 45. So we have leg and hypotenuse. So from hypotenuse to leg, we're getting smaller, so we're going to divide. And if it's a 45, 45, 90, we always divide by root 2. Okay? If we go from leg to hypotenuse, we multiply by root 2. 45, 45, it's all about the root 2. So 12 divided by root 2, that's what x is going to be. Right? So the only problem is I can't have square root in the denominator, so I've got to rationalize it. Okay. 12 times root 2. 12 root 2. Root 2 times root 2. Root 4 is 2. Can I reduce? I can reduce. Done. Okay, slide it on over. 30, 60, 90. Okay, opposite the 30. Oh, look what they did. They didn't give us opposite the 30. So how are we going to do it? We're going to take the side that they gave us. This is the hypotenuse, and I want the short leg. So what's the rule on hypotenuse to short leg? Let's go back up here and look. All right. If I know the short leg, I multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. So if I know the hypotenuse, I got to get smaller. I'm going to divide by 2 equals my short leg, which is 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. But now that makes this easier to find x. So this is my long leg. It's opposite the 60-degree angle. Okay, so the long leg is short leg times root 3 equals the long leg. Short leg, we just said, is 2 times root 3 is 2 root 3. So x equals 2 root 3. Okay, that's it. Day 1's in the books. Go back and rewatch as often as you need to. Slow it down, pause, rewind, fast forward, whatever you need to do. But really get this one down. You're going to use it a lot this year. Okay, good luck. Ask questions if you need it. Later.